Hello and welcome to TCM. I'm Ben Mankiewicz. Tonight we continue our commemoration of the 75th anniversary of the Hollywood Blacklist, and I am pleased to be joined by actor Jon Hamm. Jon, how are you?
Very well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Jon is here to help us introduce Salt of the Earth, 1954 film, and the only movie ever to be blacklisted in Hollywood. Jon is here because he is the star of the Audible podcast, The Big Lie. Created by my cousin, John Mankiewicz. And Jon plays an FBI agent investigating the movie. So, Jon, I don't know whether you're aware of this, but you're a very big star. And this is an Audible podcast. I'm going to guess the story drew you in some meaningful way.
Absolutely. I mean, it's mostly it's the relevance of it and how easy it is to slip back into that pretty quickly if we're not diligent and we're not truly aware of what our freedoms are as artists, as filmmakers, as writers and actors, and the reverberations outward from those decisions and from those circumstances were that it broke up families. A lot of people took their own lives. It was a really devastating moment for a lot of creative people. For no tangible reason, this sort of boogeyman that was created. It's important to look back on it and to remember it, and that's what the podcast hopes to do. And obviously, the opportunity that you've given for people to see this wonderful film is the same thing.
This is a narrative podcast, and my cousin Jon wrote this screenplay, and he wrote the podcast with Jamie Napoli. But he wrote this screenplay, The Big Lie, back in the late 90s, working with Paul Jericho, who's the producer of the film. What drew Jon to the Salt of the Earth, the movie, aside from it being the only blacklisted film ever, was that this is a hugely pro-labor movie. It's about a mining strike in New Mexico based on a real story. But the notion that this was communist propaganda, and by the way, a critic who we all love, Pauline Kael, called it communist propaganda in her review of the movie, one of her first reviews. But it's not communist propaganda. It is labor propaganda, but
exactly.
I don't know, but it's okay.
It's funny how these things become relevant all over again. And the fact that we're starting to see the rise of a new labor movement even now in the 21st century, which is probably overdue, given how the workers have been treated in the new gig economy and how everyone's trying to figure everything out. It was very similar in the post-war economy. And it was all this work available and all this kind of new middle class coming out and people wanting to work, but they were still being exploited by those who had all the reins, had the reins of power. And so that's a tale as old as time. That's the kind of thing that keeps going. And again, it's what we do as storytellers, and it's what we do as creative people is shine a light on that. And that's really what the film gets right.
Yeah, these are workers at a mine fighting for mostly safety rights, the rights to be able to sort of,
not die at work.
Right. Not die at work and be able to afford a small little shack near the mine for their family. And I think, Jon, you make a great point. I try to say whenever I talk about the blacklist, I can't just say it like this guy was blacklisted. I then want to point out that we never forget how monstrous this was. And it wasn't just that a guy loses his career. As you said, it destroyed families. People took their own lives. But in the end, it's this admitted conspiracy between tyrannical members of the House Un-American Activities Committee working with the studios. It was they made a deal to blacklist these people in the name of driving communists out of Hollywood. There was no threat from communists in Hollywood. There was no effort to undermine the U.S. government, but they did it anyway. And it worked for better than a decade.
Yeah, for a little while. But in the crazy, department of unintended consequences, it actually ended up, it started as this power grab by the studios, and it ended up destroying the studio system.
That's right.
That's kind of how we got into the sort of new wave of filmmakers in the 60s and 70s. And there was some new growth that happened after this, scorched earth.
That's a great point. It can't be entirely consequential that basically the studio system unravels in 1959 at the exact same time that the blacklist comes to an end. Jon Hamm, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Here it is from 1954. This is Salt of the Earth.